Hello, my name is Shelby Carlson. I am doing a presentation on the quantification of melanoic acid in equine plasma by ultra-high performance liquid chromatography, electrospray ionization tandem mass spectroscopy. The other people who have helped me with this presentation would be Madison Chow and Amari Spates, and I have been working closely with my faculty mentor, Dr. Song. Starting with the abstract, the method was developed for a simultaneous quantification and confirmation of melanoic acid in equine plasma. So I'm doing MFA. There's a couple other people in my research group who are looking at different NSAIDs. NSAIDs is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So I'm specifically looking at MFA. So MFA was recovered from equine plasma by strong anion exchange solid phase extraction. Then the concentrations were determined from a range of 5 to 250 micrograms per milliliter by using an internal standard calibration with the internal standard as fluoxin D3. My limits of detection were determined to be 1 microgram per milliliter, and the precision obtained from this experiment was 4.7%, and the accuracy was 92.9%. This method is used because it will not interfere with any other NSAIDs that are regulated by the United States Equestrian Federation. The method can also be used to help assisting in the control of doping in horse racing. So helping to determine like whether it's doping or therapeutic. And I'll get into that more. So starting with the introduction, MFA, like I said, is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. It is used to treat chronic inflammation and pain in the musculoskeletal system, including soft tissue injury, bone and joint pathology, and lameness. It is also helpful for the navicular syndrome. Navicular syndrome is the inflammation and degradation of the navicular bone and tissue in the hoof of a horse's foot. In the horse's hoof. MFA has the capacity to affect racing performance. So there is using MFA for therapeutic uses, which the threshold that has been determined if it's therapeutic or doping is 2.5 micrograms per milliliter in the equine plasma. So for therapeutic uses would be giving the horse MFA during its time of rest or during like after a race and it's like recovery and like that to help with the pain afterwards. But doping would be like giving them a bunch of it right before a race so they can power through the race and not feel any of the pain, which can also be damaging to the horse. So that's why there's a threshold set, so that way everyone knows like how much would be considered doping. So to determine if there's even doping that's happening, they would use a presumptive test, which is an ELISA test, an enzyme-linked immunoabsorbent assay. If there's a positive sample, then they have to go to a confirmatory test to determine what specific NSAID is used or to determine that it's specifically NSAID doping. So first, for the quantification of MFA, we developed a liquid chromatography ultraviolet detection method, and we still recovered the MFA through strong anion exchange, solid phase extraction. However, the LCUV technique does not hold up in a legal court because it lacks defensible confirmation of the specific analyte. So we decided to develop a LCMS method, which can be used to provide a molecular fingerprint of very low concentrations of analyte, and it can be used in a legal court system. So this method will be used to also quantify and confirm MFA in equine plasma, and this also will not interact with any of the other NSAIDs. So if there are multiple NSAIDs being used, you could see the different mass peaks and for comparison and to determine what concentration it is through this technique. So first, starting with my experimental, the first part is extracting the MFA from the equine plasma. So we would use strong anion exchange, a solid phase extraction. The reason why we use strong anion exchange is because melanoic acid is an acid, and so it would hold on to the negative charge better of the anion exchange for trapping it in the column. So first we would pre-treat the sample, which is just making the sample combining equine plasma internal standard and then ammonia and water. And also it would contain our NSAID, a certain concentration. And then we would do column conditioning, which is just getting the column ready for solid phase extraction. Then we load the sample in. Then we'd wash out any of the other impurities or contaminants that we would not want to show up in our spectrums. And then we would elute our specific analyte. So we would elute the melanoic acid and the internal and standard for comparison. Then we would dry this using a gentle stream of nitrogen. And then we would just suspend it in our mobile phase to be ready for injection into the LCMS. So these are the parameters for the LC part of the LCMS. I'll give you a couple minutes to look at it. So we use a gradient column, which just has different concentrations of the mobile phase going. So at first it starts with 40% B, and then it increases to 90% and then back to 40%. This is the parameters for the mass spec that we used for this experiment. This is the parameters for our MFA and internal standard. So this is like what comes out after, so we can kind of see what the retention time is, and then we can look at the quantifier ion and the qualifier ion, which you will see present in the results. So figure 1 is a baseline separation of MFA from other NSAIDs. So MFA would be the very last peak, the small like purplish one, and then the other ones are the other NSAIDs that we are currently looking at our research lab, but those are their peaks. And then below is the retention time, and then it's the protonated ion because it gets protonated through the mass spec. Getting into the chromatograms that show the different concentrations of MFA that we were trying to view. First, starting with 10 micrograms per milliliter of MFA, which is the purple. It's very hard to see because the concentration is so low, but as we go through the chromatograms and increase the concentration, the peak for MFA will be easier to see. MFA is the purple, and then fluoxin is the green. We consistently use 25 micrograms per milliliter of fluoxin throughout the whole experiment. This is at 25, 50, 125, and then 250. And then these values were all used, so the retention time and then the peak area were all used in determining for the calibration curve to see how well it was at quantifying different concentrations of MFA. So this is a spectra of all of the ions present, and this is just their mass spectra. So you can see the values earlier compared to the values for the parameters, which one is the quantifier ion and which one's the qualifier ion, and those are present in the mass spectra. This is the calibration curve created from the 10 to 250 micrograms per milliliter concentration. This we used the concentration of 25 micrograms per milliliter, and we injected it 3 times. This is to determine the precision and accuracy of this method. So we were able to get an accuracy of 92.9%, and then our precision is from the percent relative standard deviation, which ends up being 4.7. So in conclusion, this method is a good method for simultaneously quantifying and confirming MFA in equine plasma. This method had, for specifically MFA, for my research, had a precision of 4.7% and an accuracy of 92.9%. The method did not interfere, so the NSAIDs did not interfere with each other. So you're able to determine one NSAID from the other. There wasn't any backtailing or overlap into another NSAID. And then this method can be used by the USEF to help control doping in horse racing. by the USEF to help determine doping in horse racing. So thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are my references for this presentation. And I just want to give an acknowledgement to the authors. We appreciate the financial support by the National Science Foundation and the Illinois State Academy of Science. Thank you.